He was a billionaire CEO who had everything money could buy, except faith in people. Mostly, he felt empty inside. She was a single mom who had nothing left but her kindness. She never stops giving. When their worlds collided, her selfless heart would inspire him in ways he never thought possible, and remind him that true wealth is found not in money, but in humanity. Meet Emma Collins. She's in her late 30s, a hardworking single mom raising her 8-year-old son, Liam. After losing her husband to illness, Emma has been carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. She works 2 jobs just to survive, mornings at a small neighborhood cafe, and afternoons as a part-time administrative assistant. Her days are long, exhausting, and filled with challenges, but you would never know it just by looking at her. Emma never complains. She greets every customer with a warm smile, encourages her son with love, and spreads kindness wherever she goes. But on the other side of the city, there's Alexander Blake, a tech billionaire, the kind of man people admire for his success, but few actually know the real him. Behind his sharp suits and luxurious lifestyle is a man who's grown bitter, cynical, and disillusioned. Years of betrayal in business, greed in the corporate world, and even scandals in the media have hardened his heart. Alexander doesn't trust anyone anymore. To him, kindness feels like a scam, and generosity is just another way people try to take advantage. Their worlds couldn't be more different. Emma is grounded in community and compassion. Alexander is surrounded by walls of wealth and power, but also loneliness. And then, fate brings them together. One Saturday afternoon, Alexander attends a community event, one his company is sponsoring, though he doesn't really care about it. He's there only because his PR team insists. He stands quietly at the back, distant, scrolling on his phone, until his eyes catch something. It's Emma. She's not dressed fancy, just her casual jeans and a simple blouse. But the way she's moving through the crowd stops Alexander cold. He watches as Emma kneels down to tie a little boy's shoe, even though she doesn't know him. He sees her help an elderly woman carry a tray of food. And when a nervous teenager struggles to speak during an activity, Emma leans in, giving words of encouragement that light up the girl's entire face. For the first time in years, Alexander feels something stir inside him. This isn't charity for show. This isn't someone trying to get credit. This woman is real, genuine, and that unsettles him more than he cares to admit. But Alexander doesn't approach her, not yet. He just watches, quietly, curiously, almost suspiciously. Why would anyone be this kind without wanting something in return? He thinks to himself. What Alexander doesn't know is that this single mom, with nothing but struggles of her own, is about to change his entire outlook on life. And soon, his path will keep crossing with hers in ways he never expected. But the question is, will Alexander allow himself to be inspired by her kindness? Or will his cynicism push her away before he even gets the chance? Stay with me, because their next encounter will be far more personal than either of them could imagine. When 2 lives are meant to intertwine, fate finds a way, even in the most ordinary places. After that community event, Alexander couldn't stop thinking about Emma. It bothered him, actually. He had met thousands of people in his life, politicians, CEOs, celebrities, but none of them had left this kind of impression. And yet here he was, sitting in the back of his sleek black car, staring out the tinted windows, replaying the image of a single mom he didn't even know. But life had other plans. A few days later, Alexander walks into a quiet neighborhood cafe, not the kind of place you'd expect a billionaire CEO to go. He's used to high-end restaurants, business lounges, and private clubs. But that morning, he wanted something different. Something away from reporters, cameras, and boardroom stress. The bell above the door jingled softly as he stepped inside. The cafe smelled of freshly ground coffee beans and warm pastries. The wooden tables, a little worn from years of use, gave the place a cozy, lived-in charm. And behind the counter, there she was again, Emma Collins. Her hair tied loosely back, apron wrapped around her waist, hands moving quickly as she poured coffee and greeted each customer with a cheerful smile. She looked tired, anyone could see that, but there was a warmth about her that filled the room. Alexander froze for a moment, almost doubting his eyes. "It can't be her again," he muttered under his breath. But it was. He sat down at a corner table, keeping his distance, just observing. He noticed how Emma leaned down to talk to a little girl, asking about her school project like it was the most important thing in the world. He watched her slip an extra cookie into a bag for a customer who seemed down, whispering, "This one's on me. I hope today gets better for you." It didn't make sense to him. Why was she so giving? Didn't she have her own problems? Emma finally approached his table, not recognizing who he was at first. "Good morning. What can I get for you?" she asked kindly. Alexander hesitated. He wasn't used to being treated like just another customer. People usually stumbled over their words, eager to impress him or ask for something. But Emma just waited patiently, pen poised over her little notepad. "Just a black coffee," he said flatly. "Coming right up," she replied with a smile, moving off without another word. For the first time in years, Alexander felt normal. No one trying to impress him. No one begging for favors. Just a woman doing her job with kindness. As he sipped his coffee, he overheard a quiet conversation between Emma and one of the regulars. The man asked how she was holding up, and Emma, with that same calm tone, replied, "It's not easy, but Liam's worth every bit of it. He's my whole world." Alexander's chest tightened. She wasn't just kind, she was raising a child alone. And yet she carried herself with strength, never letting her struggles weigh down the people around her. That night, back in his luxury penthouse, Alexander found himself restless. He couldn't shake the image of Emma's smile, the way she lifted others even when she had so little herself. He thought about the way she mentioned her son, Liam. And for the first time in years, Alexander asked himself, when was the last time I did something for someone without expecting anything in return? The next week, Alexander began noticing Emma in other places too. At a community center event organized for kids, there she was, setting up chairs, passing out food, encouraging children who didn't believe in themselves. At a park fundraiser, she was leading a group of volunteers, not because she had to, but because she genuinely cared. And with each encounter, something inside Alexander began to shift. He even started to help in secret, quietly, carefully. When he overheard Emma struggling to pay for her son's asthma medication at the pharmacy, Alexander made a discreet phone call. The next time she came in, the pharmacist told her, "It's been taken care of." She never knew who paid. When the cafe's old espresso machine suddenly broke down, leaving Emma worried about how the business would keep going, a brand new machine was delivered within days. Anonymous, no sender listed. Emma simply assumed it was a blessing from a generous customer. She never suspected Alexander. But behind the scenes, Alexander was slowly relearning what it meant to give. Not for recognition, not for business strategy, but because kindness mattered. Because Emma had shown him, without even knowing it, that humanity wasn't lost. Yet, as much as Alexander wanted to believe in this newfound hope, part of him still held back. Could he really trust this feeling? Could one woman's kindness truly change a lifetime of disappointment? And Emma, completely unaware of Alexander's quiet watch over her, was about to face challenges far greater than she ever imagined. Because while her heart was full of kindness, her life was still burdened with struggle. And soon, those struggles would reach a breaking point. Soon, Emma's world will be turned upside down, and Alexander will be forced to decide whether to remain a bystander or step in when she needs him most. Life has a way of testing the strongest souls. And for Emma Collins, every day felt like a test she had to pass. For her son, for her future, and for the little faith she still carried in her heart. As weeks passed, her struggles grew heavier. The bills piled up on the kitchen counter, unopened envelopes staring back at her with bold red letters. Final notice. Her landlord had been patient, but patience only goes so far when rent is past due. Late one night, after putting Liam to bed, Emma sat at the worn kitchen table with her head in her hands. The light above flickered, her pen tapped against an empty checkbook, and her eyes stung with exhaustion. But when Liam called softly from the bedroom, "Mom, can you tuck me in?" She forced a smile, wiped her tears quickly, and whispered, "Of course, sweetheart." Because no matter how hard life got, Emma never let her son see her break. But the breaking point was closer than she realized. At the cafe, the owner pulled her aside one morning, voice low and apologetic. "Emma, I hate to say this, but business has been slow. If things don't pick up, I may have to let some staff go." Her heart sank. She nodded, forcing understanding, but inside she was panicking. This cafe wasn't just a job, it was one of her lifelines. Losing it would mean fewer hours, less income, and one more blow she couldn't afford. And if that wasn't enough, trouble followed her to her second job. At the small corporate office where she worked part-time, Emma became the target of a mistake she didn't even make. An accounting error left a client furious, and her supervisor, looking for someone to blame, pointed the finger at her. "I didn't do this," Emma said firmly, her voice trembling but resolute. But the supervisor just crossed his arms and said coldly, "Either fix it or you're out." That night, Emma returned home defeated. The weight of the world pressed down on her shoulders, and for once, she let the tears fall where no one could see. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the family photo of her late husband on the nightstand. "I'm trying," she whispered, voice breaking. "I'm doing everything I can for Liam. But I don't know how much longer I can keep this up." What Emma didn't know was that Alexander had been watching all along. From the sleek office tower downtown, Alexander's days looked nothing like hers. He was surrounded by glass walls, marble floors, and a team of assistants at his beck and call. But even as he sat in meetings worth millions of dollars, his mind kept wandering back to Emma. The community events. The quiet strength she carried, even in the face of hardship. When he heard whispers through his company's community outreach team about Emma's troubles, that the cafe she worked at was close to shutting down, that she was under scrutiny at her second job, he felt something he hadn't felt in years: anger. Not at Emma, but at the unfairness of it all. Here was a woman who gave so much, who asked for nothing, who carried the world on her back without complaint. And yet life seemed determined to break her down. One evening, Alexander found himself driving past Emma's neighborhood. He didn't plan to. His driver raised an eyebrow when he gave the address. But Alexander just sat silently in the back seat, watching the streets grow smaller, humbler, until they pulled up near a modest apartment complex. Through the window, he saw Emma carrying groceries up the stairs with Liam by her side. She was smiling, laughing even, despite the weight of the bags and the struggles he knew she carried. And something inside Alexander broke wide open. For years, he had lived behind walls of wealth, convinced that kindness was nothing more than a mask people wore to get what they wanted. But watching Emma, he realized he had been wrong. Her kindness was real. Her love for her son was real. And her struggles were very, very real. That night, Alexander couldn't sleep. He paced the length of his penthouse, the city lights glittering beneath him. He thought about his billions, his company, his reputation. None of it filled the void inside him. None of it mattered compared to the quiet strength of one single mom who never stopped believing in love, hope, and humanity. He knew he couldn't stay on the sidelines anymore. Not when Emma was at risk of losing everything she had worked so hard for. But stepping in meant more than just writing a check. It meant revealing himself. It meant letting his guard down and showing Emma the man behind the money. And that terrified him. Because Alexander wasn't just afraid of being rejected. He was afraid that if Emma saw him for who he truly was, the cynical, guarded man who had lost faith in people, she might lose faith in him too. Now, as Emma's world was about to collapse, Alexander stood at a crossroads. Would he remain the distant, hidden benefactor, or finally step out of the shadows and show Emma who he really was? In the next turn of events, Alexander's decision will change both their lives forever, and Emma will finally discover the truth she never saw coming. When life pushes someone to their lowest point, it also reveals who will stand by them. And for Emma Collins, that moment came sooner than she ever expected. The cafe had been struggling for months, but this time, it was different. The owner called Emma into the back room one morning, his voice heavy with regret. "I'm so sorry, Emma," he said quietly. "I've done everything I can, but the numbers just don't add up. We'll be shutting down by the end of the month." Emma felt the ground sink beneath her feet. This wasn't just a job, it was a lifeline. The cafe was how she kept food on the table and the lights on at home. She managed a weak smile, nodded politely, and thanked her boss for the opportunity. But inside, she was breaking. As if that wasn't enough, her troubles at the office job escalated. Despite proving she hadn't made the accounting error, the supervisor refused to back down. He accused her of negligence in front of the staff, humiliating her. That night, Emma sat alone on the apartment floor after Liam had gone to bed, her unopened bills scattered around her like a storm she couldn't escape. She whispered to herself, "I can't lose both jobs. I just can't." But what Emma didn't know was that someone had already decided she wouldn't have to. The very next morning, the cafe's owner walked in with tears in his eyes. "Emma, I don't know how this happened, but we're not closing." An anonymous donor stepped in, paid off the debts, even gave us funds to upgrade the place. "We're saved." Emma froze. Relief washed over her so suddenly she almost dropped the coffee pot in her hands. "What? Why would someone do that?" The owner shook his head. "I don't know. But whoever it is, they must really believe in us." Emma smiled faintly, but deep down she was puzzled. Who would care enough to save this tiny cafe? That same week, her nightmare at the office finally turned around. Out of nowhere, the supervisor was called into a meeting with the higher-ups. Hours later, Emma learned he had been quietly transferred. His treatment of employees had come under scrutiny, and her name was cleared. Just like that, the cloud hanging over her was gone. Emma couldn't explain it. Blessing after blessing seemed to fall into her lap. But she didn't question it too much. She was just grateful. Until the night she found out the truth. It was late. The cafe closed for the evening. Emma stayed behind to clean, humming softly to herself, when the bell above the door jingled. She turned, surprised, and there he was. Alexander Blake. Not in a suit this time. Not surrounded by cameras or assistants. Just a man in a simple button-down shirt, standing quietly in the doorway. "Mr. Blake?" she asked, confused. "What are you doing here?" For a moment, he said nothing. He just looked at her, really looked at her, as if searching for the right words. Then finally he spoke. "I owe you an apology, Emma. You don't know me, not really. But I know you. I've been watching, not in a creepy way," he added quickly, almost nervous, "but because you reminded me that humanity isn't lost." Emma furrowed her brows, unsure what to say. "I don't understand." Alexander took a deep breath. "It was me. Thinking to see the bills, your job. I stepped in. I didn't want you to know because I didn't want it to seem like I was trying to buy your gratitude. But the truth is, you've inspired me in ways I didn't think were possible." Emma's eyes widened. Shock, gratitude, confusion, all of it rushed over her at once. She shook her head slowly. "Why me? I'm just a single mom, trying to get by. Why would a billionaire care about me?" Alexander's voice softened. "Because you're the kind of person I stopped believing existed. Someone who gives without expecting anything back. Someone who chooses kindness, even when life gives you every reason not to. Emma, you reminded me what it means to believe in people again." The room went silent. Emma clutched the rag in her hands, her heart pounding. She wanted to be angry, angry that he'd hidden the truth, angry that he'd seen her at her lowest, but she couldn't be. Not when his eyes, filled with sincerity, told her this wasn't about power or money. It was about something deeper. For the first time, she saw Alexander not as a billionaire CEO, but as a man who had been broken by the world, but who found hope again through her. But Emma's life was still fragile. And though Alexander had stepped in, the question remained, was this just a moment of generosity, or was he truly willing to stand by her and Liam in the long run? As Emma stared into his eyes, caught between gratitude and uncertainty, she whispered, "What does this mean, Alexander? For you and for us?" Emma's world will finally find peace, and Alexander's life will take a turn he never thought possible. Because what began as quiet acts of kindness will end as a story of hope, humanity, and a bond that could change everything. Sometimes the hardest journeys bring us to the most unexpected destinations. And for Emma Collins and Alexander Blake, what started as two separate lives had become a story of hope, resilience, and humanity restored. After Alexander revealed the truth, Emma's world felt like it had shifted. She struggled to process it at first. The idea that this powerful billionaire had been quietly lifting her burdens without asking for anything in return. Part of her wanted to push him away, to prove she could handle things on her own. But another part, a much deeper part, knew that Alexander's presence wasn't just about money. It was about something greater. In the weeks that followed, Alexander didn't retreat. He showed up, not with gifts, not with checks, but with time. He visited the cafe often, sitting at a corner table with a cup of black coffee, asking Emma about her day. He walked with her and Liam in the park, not as a billionaire CEO, but as a man who had finally learned to laugh again. One afternoon, as Liam kicked a soccer ball across the grass, Alexander joined in. His laughter echoed through the park as Liam shouted, "Pass it back, Mr. Blake." For the first time in years, Alexander's smile wasn't forced, wasn't for the cameras, it was real. But Alexander's transformation didn't stop there. Inspired by Emma's resilience, he launched a new philanthropic initiative through his company, programs designed to support hardworking single parents and community heroes who often went unnoticed. Scholarships for kids, grants for struggling small businesses, resources for families who needed just one chance to get back on their feet. And he made one promise: none of it would bear his name. It wasn't about recognition anymore. It was about impact. At the launch event, Alexander stood on stage, but his words weren't about himself. They were about people like Emma. "There are everyday heroes all around us," he said, his voice steady, his eyes finding Emma in the crowd. "People who give, who sacrifice, who love selflessly. They are the ones who remind us what humanity is truly about. Today, we honor them." The audience erupted in applause, but Alexander only smiled humbly and stepped aside. Back at the cafe, life began to feel lighter for Emma. The cafe was thriving again, her reputation at her office job had been restored, and most importantly, Liam was happy. She no longer had to carry the weight of the world alone. One evening, after closing, Alexander stayed behind with Emma. They sat together at one of the small wooden tables, the smell of coffee lingering in the air. Emma looked at him, her voice soft but firm. "You know, Alexander," she said, "you didn't just save my cafe or my job. You reminded me that good people still exist in this world. And I'll never forget that." Alexander shook his head gently. "No, Emma. You reminded me. You showed me what real kindness looks like. You gave me back something I thought I'd lost forever, my faith in humanity." Tears welled in Emma's eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of relief, of gratitude, of hope. She reached across the table, placing her hand over his. And in that quiet moment, there were no billionaires, no titles, no struggles, just two people brought together by the simple power of kindness. From that day forward, Emma and Liam thrived. Their lives weren't perfect, no life ever is, but they were filled with more love, more stability, and more hope than they had ever imagined. And Alexander? He finally found the peace he had been chasing his whole life. Not in boardrooms, not in headlines, not in wealth, but in connection, in compassion, in rediscovering what it meant to believe in people again. Because in the end, true wealth isn't measured by the size of your bank account, but by the size of your heart. And sometimes, all it takes is one person's kindness to change everything. Moral of this story: even the smallest acts of love can restore faith, inspire change, and transform lives. Because real success isn't about what you have, it's about the lives you touch along the way. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to give it a like and share it with someone who needs a reminder that kindness still exists. And if you want more inspiring stories like this, make sure to subscribe. You never know, the next one might change your perspective forever. And remember, we're not just telling stories. We're changing lives.